Hello. Good morning. Good morning. It's about 3 after. Take a moment, if you would, drop your name into the attendees list. Get credit for being here. Otherwise, it doesn't count. So also, we'll start in 2 minutes. One thing, is Anita on? Yes. Anita, it is deceiving. But there are, I don't know, 25 people that have joined this week or so, maybe 20. And so they're a bit difficult to find. Slack kind of hides them. But Anita, in the community management channel, you'll find a message saying that that person has joined. So if we go all the way back to last Friday, all the way back to 7 whole days ago, then we'll find some more. So.
All right, I'll check that out now.
Oh, thank you. I just realized I had my speakers down so low I couldn't even hear anything. Also, Anita, we're going to have to celebrate your the winning of the pageantry for you. So we'll have to.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Congrats. Yeah. All right, fair enough. Well, we're 5 after. It's the 7th of May, Friday. It's the last day of KubeCon EU. KubeCon, Cloud Native Con, KubeCon EU Virtual 2021. I think that's like the full title of the conference. Well, a lot of by way of just jumping into the meeting and into the announcements, there was a talk given earlier today that Adina can tell you about, of which she'll probably harass me for not being at the talk. But Adina was there making sure that people are aware of your projects, because today's talk was essentially like almost entirely on your projects. The talk is, oh, you know what? I'll put it here. I encourage you to, well, review and go be social with, go be social, go share with the rest of the world what you're doing. I certainly try to. So as a recap, most of you are familiar with this. Some of you come to the CNCF Service Mesh Working Group and present on some of the initiatives that you're working on, because those initiatives are one and the same. So let me take a quick look at who's on. So we've got about 20 people on. And other than, so Samir and Gaurav, I know that we've spoken before. I know that you might have been on at least 1 or 2 calls before, but I don't know that either of the two of you have been on this call, the community call. Have you? And Neil as well.
Yeah.
No, this is my first time.
I have been.
Nice. Yep. So here's the trick, or here's the hidden sneaky secret, is that in the community we meet. There's a meeting each day on different topics, and so this is the community meeting. We meet once a week. This is the broadest set of topics that we discuss. Your mileage may vary from week to week. Fortunately, Michael Gefeller is on today's agenda, so we'll have an enlightened discussion. And but the point is, not everyone shows up to all the meetings, and how could they? Or not all the meetings are of interest to them. They don't always have the time. Point is, as a new member, you have to introduce on each of those calls so that everybody gets to know you. So Samir, if you don't mind, maybe you could lead us off and just say hi to everybody. Just a quick introduction.
Yes. Hi everybody. I hope I'm audible.
You are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I am Samir. So I'm basically working as a DevOps engineer for one of the product firm in Bangalore. So I have been working as a implementation of our infrastructure, along with that designing and architecting the service mesh for our company. So I have joined mostly 1 week back to this Layer 5 community, and I really find it interesting and hope to contribute and hope to learn. So that's a little intro about me, and I have around 6.5 years of experience into infrastructure. And my favorite, tool which I play along is Kubernetes, the most important one. So yeah.
Nice. Oh, yeah, Samir. That couldn't have been more perfect. Like, you're both. I mean, you're both have had a fair bit of experience with this type of infrastructure. You're here to both share and learn. You're here to contribute, which you already are, and we might even talk about some of that today. And you're here to use the tools as well. So, what else? What else can we have you doing? There's like you're, and I say that jokingly. Actually, at some point, there's a few people who are on the call who actually wear, well, they wear a couple of different hats. So Michael wears a maintainer hat. And Adita now does as well. I'm sorry, did I say Adita? I meant to say Husseina. I'm looking for, so Ruth is on the call. She's a mesh mate. She wears that hat. There's a few other hats. And actually, there's another hat. I don't mean to interrupt your intro, but while we were just, I might share a slide on this. So is Nikhil on? Vinayak? And there's a number of people here who are going to expand how much knowledge we try to share on the Layer 5 IO site. And eventually that would probably form a certification program for those that are quite meshy. And maybe we'll do that in partnership with the Linux Foundation. Maybe we won't. I think it would go further if we did. I don't think that all of that would be attributed to, or much of that might not be attributed back to the works of the individuals here. Time will tell. As Meshery goes into the CNCF, we might base the certification exam around Meshery, which would work really well. And then we would partner with the Linux Foundation. The thing is we wouldn't be able to call the certification a mesh master. And I so desperately have wanted to have mesh mates and mesh masters and any other portmanteau that, like Meshmark that Adina is talking about, any other portmanteau that we can like squish mesh with is good. So sorry. Anyway, there are other roles. That said, Samir, I'm not sure if one person can take on more than you are. It's nice to have you.
Yeah, I can. And in the ISTO book, so which is I have been going through, it's really good. But the thing which I felt is like the paragraph are quite long, so it could have been shortened. So because or maybe the punctuations are being bits shortened so to understand. But yeah, it's really good. So
Also, I love yeah, sorry, I get a chuckle because the book that Samir is referring to is the Istio Up and Running book, of which when I had embarked on it, I thought I was going to write a third of it. I ended up, a co-author left, so I wrote 2/3 of it. And yeah, if you can't tell, I get long in the writing. And so I'm working on that. The editors are trying to help me be more concise, direct, straightforward, shorter.
but the information which has been given are fantastic, because I have almost started my ISTO journey with that book. So ideally, uh, maybe months back. So that was my stepping stone. So
I have more to say there, but I'm going to ask Neil, if you don't mind, maybe to introduce.
Yeah. So I'm Neil. I'm currently I'm in my third year of undergrad. I'm studying computer science, like doing engineering in computer science. Uh, I wanted to contribute to a CNCF project, which had like some part of JavaScript as well as Go. I wanted to shift to Go as well, like learn a bit, because I wanted to I wanted to start my journey in backend engineering basically, and wanted to also learn about Kubernetes and Kubernetes ecosystem, service meshes, etc. So that's how I got introduced to meshery. So yeah, that's how much.
It's a love story in the making, Neil. It's a good,
Yeah.
good to have you. Very nice to have you. Gaurav, Mr. Chada.
So yeah, am I audible properly before I go?
Yep.
So hello everyone. So my name is Gaurav Cheda. So I'm currently a sophomore pursuing BTech Computer Science from India. So this is my initial learning stage. So I am learning very much from Layer 5 community, and I have learned quite a bit few things. So currently I have decent skills of front-end development and UX UI designing. So I am also looking forward to contribute to Layer 5 and learning much from Layer 5 community. So that's all, a brief one.
That's beautiful. As a matter of fact, I mean, what a sweet thing to have Samir introducing and making waves already. It's what's the right? Him introducing at the same time that Neil and Gaurav are introducing. Samir's got a lot. There's a lot to be shared back and forth. The more questions that Gaurav asks, the more that Samir will learn as he goes to share and instruct and teach and vice versa. So it's a beautiful thing. And so back to the agenda. The reason that I interrupted myself was to say we had a talk earlier today, and by we, even though some of you might think that phrasing's odd, there were two overweight, pale-looking guys talking, but what we were able to talk about was, well, all the things that you all do, and that's actually why we got to talk. That's why we had stuff to even walk through. And so I really do encourage all of you, no matter how long you've been hanging around, to take a look at the link that's in the community meeting minutes. It'll take you to this deck to peruse it and to soak it in, to take some pride in seeing the fact that your work is on stage at KubeCon. That's not the ultimate goal, or that's not the end all be all, but it sure does feel good. And there's a lot of folks that show up. Adina, I wasn't able to make this talk. Were you able to see how many people?
I was there. I didn't see how many people were there, but it was a cool presentation, and it looked like interactive because at the end you're asking Ben, I forgot his name. You're asking him something, and and he was available after that on Slack. Actually, for my surprising, I just had an aha moment between this and the presentation of new guy. Like learning, it's hard. It's so fucking hard. But learning with Meshery, it's easy.
Yeah.
It's just I went to some other talks after that, and let's say you know how to present to make it simple when you present complicated things. So yeah, it was a nice presentation.
That's good. Yeah. The thing is it's kind of an interesting thought that well, many of you are here learning a lot of this. Well, and so am I. Well in advance of much of the rest of the world. And again, like I think some of the things that I say like this, some of you might be thinking, you know, what are you talking about? Like, how could I be out ahead of, in front of that, the rest of the world? Like, but the reality
How
is,
can you? How can you do that?
yeah. Well, no, not me. I mean, yeah, no. How can all of you?
I'm serious. How can you? Because you do.
And so, but the reality is that's true. I can't find the screen to share. The reality is that it's true that most folks have yet to make it this far in their journeys. And so you're here, and there will be a long time of helping people learn and learning at the same time. It's nice. So, okay, that was that. Actually, so we're up to our first topic. By the way, did everyone that's, oh boy, Jessica Rat. Yes, dude, I hit it.
Hello, sir. How are
Hello.
you?
Good.
Good to see you.
I've been practicing your name too. Somebody's been helping me.
Oh, actually, it's just Kiran.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then Aditya taught me wrong. Yeah. So it's his fault.
I told just Kirat only.
No, that's not what you said. I don't. That's not how you. But yeah, if you don't mind to introduce real quick.
Yeah, I guess I may have stressed upon the E part a bit long.
That's probably because I was mispronouncing it so badly. You were just trying to, yeah. But yeah, please take a moment to introduce, and then.
So, hey everyone, my name is Jaskirat Singh, and I'm currently a junior undergrad at Guru Tegh Bahadur Institute of Technology. That's a college of IB University, India. And I'm currently majoring in information technology and passionate about web development, and have worked with MERN stack, Mean stack, and I've acquired skills for the same. I've also have interest in DevOps field and in building cloud native applications. Like they are my future goals, and I'm looking forward to be a prominent part of Layer5 community and like contributing every day. That's it.
Well, I'm not going to embarrass myself again by saying your first name, but it's very nice that you're here. You're already hitting your 4 GB limit, I think, on your laptop. So, which means that you're already into the thick of things. So, Mr. Molly, did you want to give a short introduction? Nikunj.
Yes.
There you are.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I am Nikunj Mali from Rajkot, Gujarat in India. And I am currently working as a .NET developer at IBEX Financial Technology, Mumbai, located in. I have a 6 months experience in .NET.
Nice. By the way, any .core in there for you?
What?
Any .NET Core?
What?
I will type it out. Have you gotten a chance to work with .NET Core? Okay, cool. All right, I'll type it out in chat to you. But very good.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice. Thanks for coming. Nice to. Well, all right, Michael. You please take it away. Do you want to share, or do you want me to leave this up?
Hi, no, hi everyone. I'll share the link. I'll try that. Let me check share screen. It's this one. I assume you can share my screen. You can see my screen. Yes, thanks. So I'll talk a little bit about the messaging system and notification center from a very high level perspective, and then something very concrete in around error codes in Golang code. So on a very high level view, the messaging system and notification center is about that all the components in Measury produce and emit various events, and these events are interesting for other components. And in order to handle this stream of events, there will be a messaging system and notification center. The messaging system is to be able to send and to pick up events that one is interested in, and the notification center will be used to display these events in various forms. As far as I know, there's a couple of sort of like basic implementations that have been done, but mainly this is still in the design phase. Something that I've been involved in this recently was a discussion about how the actual events, the data structure of the events should be structured. And we decided to leverage something called cloud events. Cloud events, I'm not quite sure whether it's a standard, but the point is that it should provide a unified format for events that various event providers and implementations would support, so that it's easier to exchange events between different messaging systems. So we have been looking at the format of these cloud events. The event is what is emitted, and then an event is packaged into a system, into a message, sorry, which is sent through a messaging system and can be picked up by interested parties. So an event attribute or event consists of a multitude of attributes. There's an ID, there's a source where the event comes from. And I mentioned components earlier. One possible component is an adapter, and a possible concrete component, adapter component, is console. So the source of an event in an event in an actual event in a field would be a URN, Measury, adapter console. That's a suggestion that we can discuss, of course. And then there is a version of the specification of cloud event. Then there is a type. That will be one of the Measury event types. So we have different types of events. For instance, a log event, an error event, and we'll be looking a little bit closer at error events. Then we have an attribute which is data, which contains the actual payload of the event. So all the other fields are context of an event, and the actual payload, like the actual log message, the actual error message, is then transmitted in the field, in the data field. There's a possibility to specify which content type the data is actually encoded in. There's also possible to specify a schema or point to a schema for the data, for the payload, and timestamp when the event was generated, and subject, which is optional, that can be used to group events, and correlation ID, which is optional. It is possible, so cloud events opens up for that the context information can be extended with custom fields, and the correlation idea that we could use to correlate different events with each other so that it would be possible to group these events together would be, or is a suggestion for a measure-specific extension to the cloud event format. I mentioned a couple of different event types. Here is a suggestion of different event types: errors, log, registration, health, operation, best practice, validation, could be possible event types. Now, if you look a little bit closer at error events, we all have seen them in the code. We have specified a format in MeshKit for error codes, and with specific attributes. There's a code. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, which uniquely identifies a specific error within a specific component. So this means that an error code is unique for a specific component and component type. It's not unique across the whole of all of the measuring components. This means that error codes are namespaced, and to exemplify this is that, for instance, the Istio adapter owns its codes completely independently of other adapters. So they can have the same code number, but they're namespaced by the use of the component type, which would be adapter, and the component name, which would be Istio in that case, and then the error code. Then other attributes are severity, short description, long description, probable cause, and suggested remediation. Now you see that the attribute names are all lowercase and no hyphens, no underscores, and that's part of the cloud event specification, the naming convention for attributes. So that makes it easier for operability between. Now, the error code is just a number. It's just an integer. It carries no semantics. One of the reasons why we sort of decided doing that is that if you have semantics in codes, then everybody has to be aware of that. And sooner or later, there's a chance that someone doesn't know that and then uses an error code in the wrong way or attaches different semantics to it. So the decision is, or the suggestion is, no semantics. So we have not, like in HTTP status codes, that error ranges, code ranges have a specific meaning, like 500 are errors or 400 are errors, and so on and so forth. Now, one thing, important thing is, okay, we emit errors with error codes, which carry useful information. And of course, the user would like to have some more information about this, would like to have a reference. They can go and figure out what the error code is, because maybe in the user interface, we do not expose all this information, but just the error code and maybe severity and the short description. So we would like to have an error code reference on the Meshery homepage where the user can go and look up this error code. As you can see here, this is sort of like an initial design, about how this can look like. There are not so many error codes yet defined. And as far as I could see, none of the error codes actually have information.
I just want to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry.
Good. You got my joke. Okay.
Okay. Yes. Anyway, so here you can see, for instance, in this table, I get back to that in a minute. But one of the issues that we're looking at is how do you make sure that these error codes within the components do not overlap? So this is one of the things a new utility that we're working with will handle, that we make sure within a component error codes do not overlap, and that error codes are actually incremented and assigned automatically in the source code when new error codes are defined. And there's also a question, where is the master data? So where do you actually maintain and specify all the descriptions, probable cause and suggested remediations? It should be close to the code, and it should be easy to find, easy to remember where it is, and intuitively be able to understand where one should maintain this. And the sort of most sensible place is in the code. So the question is then, how does it get from the Golang code onto this, onto the reference pages on the website? And here again, this tool is coming in handy. Now, if you go quickly to the code, just to show what the tool actually does and is going to do. Let me see where I find this. So in the code, there are variables with a convention that they're beginning with ERR, and that the error codes, actually integers, are defined here and then used other places in the code. You see here that this is not an integer, this is a placeholder, and the tool would then find all these placeholders and set the next code and an integer and replace this placeholder with that. You can also see that one method that is going to be deprecated from the meshkit errors package, namely new default, should be recognized by this tool and reported so that we know this is deprecated and should be replaced by a constructor method or a new method, which will contain all the extra information that I was mentioning earlier. So the tool is going through the error code, is going to do through the code, finding all variables that are following this naming convention, and then setting the error code to the next available number, and doing a couple of sort of analysis and statistics and finding duplicates and generating output that can be imported into the Meshery website to generate this reference code. So one possible way to do that would have been using a Python script and to use regular expressions. But as the saying goes, you know, if you have one task and you're using regular expressions, then suddenly you have two problems. So the proper way to do is to use code tools from the language and use the abstract syntax tree to go through the code and to find nodes that correspond to code that one needs to change, and then change these nodes and write the code back to disk. And this is what we're doing here. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with abstract syntax tree and how this looks like. The tooling in Golang is really good, I think. I'll just show one example. Let me show this. So this here is a really simple source code file with just one variable that we want to detect. And when you put this into a tool, or when you run this, when you generate the abstract syntax tree and print it out, then you get this result for this simple code. Details are maybe not so important, but it means that you have a starting point in your tree, and then you go through all the nodes and all their changes and so on. And then you see that at some stage you find a node that corresponds to a declaration of a variable which has a name, and it has a value, and this value is replace me. So if you find this node, given by its name and the value, then you can just use the tooling to replace the value with the next integer. Or we can also use this to detect the methods that are deprecated, like the new default method I showed earlier, and write that down to a log of this tool. Quickly show that code. This is part of this tool. It's in MeshKit. As a command line utility that can be used locally or as part of the CI/CD pipeline. So when walking through the tree, this one here, this method here, will look at one node and will test whether this node corresponds to a call expression to a function called new default. And then if so, it will just return true, that it is actually corresponding to this, and then you can create a log entry with that. Now this tool finds all these nodes that I've been talking about, all the errors, and is analyzing whether this is a literal value or a call expression, because all these error constants should be literal values and integers and not call expressions, i.e. calling other functions that return an error code. And then this tool summarizes that and helps to make this a consistent and uniform handling of the error codes. What remains here is, so it's already working and replacing the codes. It's working, but extracting this extra information in, that remains to be implemented. And that's what I've been working on recently and continue to work on. I think that's about all I sort of wanted to say. I don't know if there are any comments, Lee, or questions.
Quick question. You might have just said this. I might have just missed it. But once the air util program has gone through identified nodes within the various Mesh-free components, the code within the various Mesh-free components, and it's found the fact that, oh, like, hey, there's a new error code that needs to be, defined. Is that, like, of the JSON that we're looking at here, where does that JSON then persist local to the component? So, like for the console adapter, if it has, there's a few different errors that are defined there. The output of that command, that gets persisted local to the console adapter in that case, right? Like local to that code base.
Yeah, it's a good question. So this is the export that will be imported by the code that Alonso wrote, right? So whether this here is persisted, committed, or whether it is uploaded to some other place, we have to figure that out, right? Right now, no plan so far. But if you want to automate it, we have to discuss it. I don't know, uploading it, or maybe committing it, maybe directly committing it to Measure could be a possibility. But this is something we have to figure out. Right now, I was just sort of like giving it to him manually, so to speak.
Yeah, there's prior, as you think on that, there's prior, or something to be aware of, some prior art with respect to release notes. So each time that we make a Mesh release, there's certain number of, there's the change log, if you will, the release notes. Well, there's been, it took us about a year, but we finally automated the publishing of those release notes. As and when we make a release, it just auto updates the Mesh docs. And so, yeah, I think both, not only is there prior art in terms of like what the GitHub workflow might look like, but also in terms of just the project being comfortable with that level of automation. Let me rephrase this last question that I asked to just make sure that and that is, and this just maybe this isn't yet decided, but so in each of Mesh3's components, of which, or that use MeshKit, as a consistent, uniform set of utilities like the air utility. So Mesh3 server at some point it sort of predates MeshKit, so it only uses so much of MeshKit today, but it will eventually sort of fall in line, so to speak. The Mesh3 adapters, they all use, well, I think as of like yesterday, maybe they all use, or they're about to all use MeshKit. And then whoops, I got to the middle finger. And then they all use, Mesh3 operator is another example of a component that benefits from this. And so my question is, or I guess I'll say it like this: and this doesn't have to be the case. I'm just stating my understanding. You correct me on what this is. My understanding was that there's an error folder. Each of those components that use MeshKit, that they end up having like an errors folder, and it might be within that folder that the ongoing definition of errors that might be produced by that component would reside local to the component. Is that the case? Or are we? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
If I understand it correctly. So here you see on the left-hand side, there's a package called database, and then you would have an ergo file here that defines these codes and functions that create that return these errors. And like in maybe in the no, of course not. Here in the config package, you also have an ergo file that does exactly the same. But the tool goes through the whole tree of and actually looks at all files right now. But of course, this can be filtered.
Gotcha.
And the util is just a binary that would then use in either independently, built independently, and using the CI/CD pipelines to go through and do the analysis. If that answers your question.
Yeah, that makes sense. So does anyone else have questions on this?
I have a question on a suggestion. The question is, how many types of errors are there, and what is the mechanism for detecting? And for instance, if you take a language like C++, right, you have a runtime error. So there is no, the point I'm trying to make is, a lot of times it is incumbent upon the programmer to notice that there is an error and then to react to it. But on the other hand, if you take the languages, the modern languages like C++, C#, and all those, they don't give you the choice. If you don't handle that runtime error, it's going to throw that error anyway, right? So what are the types of errors that are being handled here? And what is the mechanism for ensuring that you're always aware of an error? And I was wondering, if in this, somewhere in this error where you're intercepting this error and you're returning what the error type is, we can also include like a function pointer or something.
You're breaking up a bit. So I didn't really get all of your input and question. Maybe Abhishek. Well, basically in Golang, the practice is to check all errors and to handle all errors explicitly, but you can also do analyze the error and then decide in the code what you want to do with it. The error has a type that you can set, and that can be used to determine the further action. I don't know, are you back online? Maybe Abhishek wants to comment on that if he's in the call.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't clearly understand what the concern was, but I had a different concern about the exports. Basically, where is or which is the central place where you define all those English words of filling in probable cause and suggested remediations. For example, like basically these are all independent of like the code and these placed currently.
I didn't really, I mean, either my line is breaking up or your line was breaking up. Abhishek.
Is it clear now?
Yeah, it was clear when you asked whether it was clear.
Okay, cool. So what I was asking is that where are the English words placed? For example, the suggested remediation, probable cause, and all of these are just a fill-in after you code. So where are we planning to place these?
So are you asking where are we planning to actually write the detailed information? We would write it here, right? Like return errors new. Is it not here? Errors new.
Okay, got it. So one of the arguments in this.
We do it here, right? That's what I think that's what, at least what I understood we discussed. So you write everything here, and then the tool is extracting it from here and writing it to the export.
Okay. And the tool where it's going to extract it, that also resides inside the same repository, correct?
You mean the export, the result of the export?
Yeah, the export location.
Yeah, well, yes. As I mentioned earlier, we haven't really discussed it, whether we should upload it somewhere or, so this remains to be discussed. Right now, it's just writing it to a local file. And,
yeah, so my general ask is basically that is it necessary for us to put those inside as an argument in the function, or just fill it in there outside after generation?
actually, I think it's. I think we discussed this and landed on that. We do this in the code. If we just fill it in the export afterwards, then we have to make. There's more housekeeping to do. There's more, especially when you have. Now, if your error code is, and here you actually see that this is actually a call expression. So this one is not the way it should be, right? If you call this like test, right? Replace me, right? And you're using this and this code here. I'm just making this up like return errors. New, then the code is here, empty config. Then you can start writing all these descriptions that we don't have, of course, in arrays. The severity as well, which is something, whatever it is, severity.
Got it. So basically, it's easier for the developer.
I think it's easy because if we don't do this, then we have to have a replacement first. We have to do the replacement first, right? Export it, and then we can then we know which number it is, and then we can start
Got it.
filling in the information. So I think it's easier to handle and it's closer to the code as well. Yeah.
Understood. Yeah, it sounds good.
Yeah. Yes, time's almost up. But I can just demonstrate that it actually works. I hope still, like database errors, you see that it actually replaced the placeholders with actual values. And one thing that I didn't mention was that every repository will get a file called component info.json, where the name of the component and the type of the component is specified, and also the next error code that is to be used is specified. And this is then updated by the tool, the next error code on each run if there is a change. But I think with that, I conclude for today, if that's okay.
You dropped the mic. That's the shoot. I had one more. So Abhishek, we probably don't have. Abhishek, how long is your demo on Nighthawk? 5 minutes or less?
Yeah, I can cover it in 5 minutes. Probably.
Oh, okay. Then I'll slack you a question or two, Michael. This is exciting to me.
Sure.
So should I go, or?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So I'll be talking about the Nighthawk integration that went ahead in Meshly. This is in regards to the project Get Nighthawk. I'll just post the link to the repository of this project and the documentation. Just a second. So basically what we have achieved is that we've got this Nighthawk tool, which is a load testing tool, which does performance test. And basically what we've done is integrated the tool with Meshly to do performance test from within Meshly and to manipulate with different values in the UI. I'll just quickly share my screen to show a short demo of how it looks like. So I've got Meshly running in my local. So when you navigate to performance, you've got this performance testing dashboard in here, in which you can see different profiles that you can create in order to do a load test. So I had created a test profile called test, which basically hits this particular endpoint. It generates load with the load generator Nighthawk, and it does it for 5 seconds. On other specifications are the other specifications are mentioned inside. So basically, I send one concurrent request of 10 RPS with 5 seconds of duration. And I've got a local server of Python, basically a GET request server of Python, which is running in my local, which listens to port 8080. So I'm going to hit that to see how the load testing is going to go through. So if you hit run test, as you can see, it has started to put load inside on the server. And after it is done, it brings back with results. It says no error, which means all of the requests were executed properly. And yeah, so basically this histogram describes the RPS versus the number of requests. So yeah, basically this demo was in regards to how Nighthawk as a load testing tool was integrated with Meshly. So does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, one question. So which kind of performance this particular graph shows me? What is the endpoint for this? Is it my service in the Kubernetes, or is it the ingress, or what kind of performance?
So which are you talking about the endpoint that that I performed load test against?
Yes. What is this endpoint?
This is just a local server, like a simple Python server I just started in my local to test.
Well, yeah. And so what Samir is really asking is like, hey, of the functionality offered within Meshery for performance management, what can it be used against? Just the ingress, just the service, something off the mesh, 10 things at once, only one thing at once.
Yes. So does this kind of test I can do with you can say the Tomcat load testing. So why should I go for the integrated load test tool which you have in Mesri?
Yeah, so basically what we can do is in here we can run some sequence tests. Like basically we can define different profiles and then run or define different endpoints and run parallel test among them and then compare results with the graph that you get in here. Like basically collaborate and compare the performances and like basically indirectly what I'm saying is that you can compare the performance of different service measures by performing like by using this dashboard.
Yeah, so that is my question. So this performance graph is the performance of service mesh or my end server or my Kubernetes?
This is basically I had created a local server which uh, on which I did performance test against, and this is just for demo. So if you have some ingress or a service mesh running inside a cluster, you can just replace this endpoint with that particular ingress and then like define your own parameters to start testing.
Yeah. But it doesn't give me a intercept information about how my service mesh is performing, isn't it? So now when you do this load testing, finally it is going and hitting the backend server.
Right.
So basically, how can I know how much time does it take to pass through the ingress or the IST or service mesh to reach to my server? Where is that information? Because other information which is showing here that I can go with the JMeter and do a test. So where I can see, okay, this is something which is running or this is the performance. And this is more of a graphical representation. And when I see it in a CLI, but what is the specialty about this
Right.
particular?
So Nighthawk is not a service mesh specific load testing tool, but a rather a generic L7 load testing tool. So
Okay.
yeah, so basically you can do it. The specialty of Nighthawk is specifically that it lets you define load testing for gRPC servers as well.
Okay.
Basically, you can offload protocol buffers to do some gRPC testing. So that's one of the advantages.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay. It would be great, like if we can see those performance matrices, which will be very much helpful to us to fine tune our ISTO services, maybe the service mesh.
Right. Yeah. Uh, Lee, you want to talk about that? Basically, the idea is to integrate that functionality in Meshery, but not just with Nighthawk, but in collaborance with different other technologies.
Yeah, Samir, those are great questions. As a matter of fact, like I appreciate the way in which they're phrased, which is direct. It's like, hey, I've got a load testing tool. Why do I need this one? Like what? And it's a great question. In part, Abhishek was speaking to it. There's some more immediate answers that I think will provide some compelling clarity. They will provide clarity. Hopefully, they will be compelling. I'll try to. Abhishek, if you don't mind, since could you mind bringing your screen back up? There's two things that I think it'll hopefully these will be the aha moment for you. So to directly answer the specific thing that you're currently chasing after, Samir, is, well, part of the answer is there will be better tooling in the future. Like the best tool to probably answer your question is probably distributed tracing, and Meshery will at some point incorporate that telemetric signal. Today, it mostly focuses on metrics. That said, you can still arrive at an understanding as to what the difference is between the time spent in the mesh, like how much of the millisecond, how much of this response, how much the overhead, and well, it's milliseconds, it's time, memory, and CPU. Like how much of that is going to the mesh and what it's trying to do versus just raw, right to my app. So a couple of ways. So Abhishek, if you close this, one is that what Meshry facilitates running a couple of different tests and comparing them. So you can deploy your app off the mesh, to use Meshry to hammer on your app with a defined test set. You'll persist those results and you'll see a very similar graph. Then you can go over and Meshry will let you deploy the mesh, deploy your app on the mesh, and then take that same exact test, the same parameters, and hammer on your app while it's on the mesh. And then Meshry will, if you don't mind, Abhishek, if you go to like the test with 10 test results, or one that has more than 2. So when you look at the tabular view here under view results, we'll improve this user experience so that it's more clear. That if you select 2 of these, if you let's say that those first 2, they were fairly similar tests. I don't know if they actually got, and then if you compare them in the upper right-hand corner, there's a compare the 2. Bad example, but what you're seeing is that they're in a color-coded way. One test, the results are in red. The other test, the results are in green. And so a terrible example of tests because they ran for like 5 seconds a piece and basically there's like hardly any data to look at. But you can sit there and look at something off the mesh, on the mesh, compare them, overlap them. You can compare more than 2 tests at a time. Maybe you got 3 things you're trying out. So you can select, I think, almost any number of tests to compare against. It takes a little while to interpret and understand the graph because it's comparing a lot. And the graph itself will change in terms of its how it displays. But if you read the labels, it's what was the P99 comparison across the 3 different environments. So that's one way that you can try to get at that answer that your direct question. The second way is when you connect Meshry to Grafana, Meshry integrates with Grafana and integrates with Prometheus to be able to not only show you this latency analysis, this graph here, but in the same context, show you that and also show you, Abhishek, do you mind pulling up like Meshry data? You don't have Grafana connected, do you, in here?
No, I don't have it installed.
If you go to meshry.io, I think there's a screenshot of this that kind of shows folks. It'll basically show you like any number of graphs at the same time. And as your mouse moves up, this is kind of a good example. Like, well, you keep going down if you would. We might have moved out the screenshot because it's kind of old and very detailed. That's not it. I'll send you a screenshot. Samir, what it'll do is it'll have the latency diagram that we're looking at, that histogram. And down below, you can have your CPU, like for all your nodes or your CPU, your memory, or if you're wanting to measure other things like what's the memory of just the envoys that are just tracking for that service, or for the nodes that aren't running Istio, or just for the ingress controller, like what was so basically in any query that you can formulate in Prometheus to collect those metrics and display that in Grafana. Meshry uses Grafana's SDK to show you the specific service mesh graph, that histogram that you really won't get anywhere else. You won't get that from a JMeter, and you won't get that same analysis, and you won't get it done in a standard way in which you can compare across service meshes. Moreover, you won't be able to, with those other tools, compare how I'm running my environment relative to yours. Like, are you doing it more efficiently or am I? And well, that's like, well, I don't know, you're running a 90 node cluster and I'm running a 9 node cluster. How do we normalize that? Well, that's what this standard is attempting to do. And so then you can begin to not only answer your direct questions, but then also some other questions you begin to have over time, which is like, well, hey, over time as well, is JMeter or the other tools going to facilitate, like they'll let you save off the results, right? You can save the history of them and kind of pull them back up and share them. Meshry does that as well and overlays them visually. so that you can track and baseline across time and compare against yourself. You can also then compare against others. Eventually, there's some roadmap items for Meshry in which it will automate using Nighthawk specifically, not the other load generators, but Nighthawk. It will do adaptive load control. So it'll run some optimization routines to be able to answer questions like, do you have, like, if you were to reconfigure, if you were to turn off some of your virtual services or turn on some additional ones or maybe restructure them, would your performance improve? Like, you can use Meshry to test those types of things manually. You can run different scenarios and compare them, like I just said, but it'd be nicer if you could just click the button that says run the optimization routine. And that could be like, what's the optimal number of retries that I should configure based on my reliability posture, like the more retry, my reliability versus my SLA guarantee. I'm guaranteeing to you, user, that you'll have at least a 250 millisecond response. That's my, that's as slow as I'm willing to go, just as an example. So you'd be able to put that in, you'd be able to put in, and then I want to maximize resiliency while not exceeding that SLA. And so Meshry, why don't you run, like, and that answer is going to be different based on whatever service you're running. Like, you can't just say, I can't just tell you, like, oh, it's 2 retries. Like, everybody should run 2 retries, because then you won't. It's like, no, that is totally specific to your environment. Moreover, it's totally specific to your environment at a point in time, because today you have 90 nodes in your cluster. Tomorrow you have 9 clusters and 20 nodes apiece, or you have another microservice that you've deployed in there. And so it's like all that changes. And your ability to just go in and click, press the button to perform those types of evaluations is, well, time will tell, but I think,
yeah, that answers my questions, some of them, but yeah.
So, right. Oh, we just missed it in the, well, I'll send you a screenshot, but you can compare multiple graphs to be able to discern, like, yeah.
Okay. And another thing, can I store this kind of performance data or into my maybe some databases and see a time series graph wherein it shows me over the time how I have improved in the performance?
Yeah. Yep. We'll have to show you that. We'll have to. Well, so it's a longer answer. Like, it is one of those things where, as an open source tool, that like persisting, even Prometheus itself, long-term storage, the project doesn't address. Like, it doesn't do it. You have to plug in a remote storage adapter. Like I think you were looking at Thanos or something. What's the other one? Like, the Meshry does not attempt to incorporate. Meshry has remote providers, extension points, wherein a provider might choose to offer that for you, or as an extension to Meshry.
Okay.
We'll try to provide some clarity.
Yeah.
Those are good questions.
Yeah. So that's it.
And actually, Samir, to your point, like, hey, it might be. So while there's a bunch of nerd knobs in there to configure the type of performance tests you want to run, which is great, maybe some curated tests, or like some sort of quote unquote standard tests, like, hey, if there's a default configuration of Istio, a default sample app, and a default performance configuration, if you run it and I run it, like, while our environments might be different, at least just on that level, even though there's some fudge factor in there, like, we can begin to compare some. If you take a note on Meshry.io or SMPspec.io, and this falls more toward the SMPspec.io, it'll show you the total count of test results that users of Meshry have run. And if they have turned on that, they can send back anonymous test results, so that then eventually we'll publish something. We'll tell the world something like, here's the slowest mesh, here's the fastest mesh. By the way, Samir is the best. Like, he runs his, or it'll be anonymous, but hopefully we can help inform the world that, like, offhand, like in general or totally on average across the 10 different service meshes that Meshery supports, it's going to cost you just, you could never say what I'm about to say because it'll be totally wrong, but it would cost you 5% CPU on average, and that would be a total farce because that absolutely, like just on one thing in particular, by the way, I'm going on for way longer than I should. Thank you, Michael. Is if you like distributed tracing as an example, if you have your service mesh facilitating that, if you sample those traces once every 10 minutes, that's pretty lightweight. If you sample 1% of your requests that come through and say, I'd like to capture and store that trace, if you do it 100% of your requests, like,
yeah,
you know, it's a math. So.
That makes more sense. Yeah.
Well, fair enough. You got me talking about.
Yeah. Also, one more thing, it gives a user to choose which load generator to choose, right? But it doesn't show their pros and like their benefits. So if the user hovers onto it, then a short text may be like beneficial for the user experience, I guess.
That's a great suggestion. Yeah, really. There is a meaningful difference. They will absolutely show you, they absolutely analyze it differently. And that's why Nighthawk was written. Nighthawk was written only after WRK2 and Fortio were evaluated. And the maintainers found a meaningful enough difference that they wrote yet another performance characterization tool, Nighthawk. And so, yeah, Neil, totally. We should have, it would be good to, I mean, like we need those kinds of rich tooltips or like help, like we need a framework in which we do that in general in Meshery anyway. And that's a prominent example of a question that people would have. Because yeah, otherwise we might just want to hide the fact that there's choice because what do they know? You know, if we're not explaining it.
That's what like the first time I used it, I didn't know what all the difference between them.
Will you open an issue on that, Neil? That would be lovely.
Yep, I will do that in some time.
Okay. So, hey, we're totally over time. I appreciate that some folks have had to go already and the rest of us have to go now. So thanks, everybody. It's been very nice. We'll catch some of you in Slack. We'll see you next week.
Yep. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you, Adam. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.